Thanks for joining us in this episode of BRM Brown Bag. I'm your host, Suresh GP from TaUB Solutions, and we are into the episode number 26 of BRM Brown Bag. Today, I have a good friend and esteemed guest joining, who does not require an introduction, but I would like to make a call out. So we have Deryl Heitman, who is the Senior Director of POS Program at Discounter, and has been in that industry for a quite number of years, in fact, 25 years with Discounter. So let's have him on board and ask him his journey about BRM and what was his takeaway. Thanks so much, Deryl, for joining us today and sharing your insights to our viewers.
Morning, Suresh. How are you?
Excellent. Very good. So why don't you get started as to tell us a little bit about background on, and for us today, for our viewers, the theme today is on BRM, the land of opportunity. I love the theme, Deryl, because we typically start associating our roles with a particular role and we keep on progressing towards the role. But in a true sense, you have been a BRM, you have now played diversified roles in your existing organization. So it has landed you in different opportunities, which I think our viewers will stand to gain a lot, because it's at the end of the day to look at the entire ecosystem and see what else the BRM role, the capability and discipline can help us lead. So why don't you give us a little bit of introduction about yourself and your journey so far, and what's your current role with Discounter?
Yeah, I think the BRM role, when you think about it, really is an introduction to go just about anywhere you want to go.
Sure.
And so I started with Discount Tire 25 years ago. I started as a developer. I began working on our point of sale system at that time. It went live in 2001.
Right.
And I was an architect and project manager for that. So that's a little over 20 years ago that went live. I went on to manage the programming department, went into architecture, quite a few various roles. And then in about 2012, 2011, we decided to implement SAP.
Right.
And that was a huge transformation for us. We were we're privately held, and it's a pretty small company at that time.
Sure.
And so implementing something like SAP was a pretty big deal. And one of the things that we did as part of the OCM process was to implement the BRM capability.
Right.
And so having been around for quite a long time, and I knew a lot of the players, I knew a lot of the systems. Our CIO at the time asked me to take on that role for IT. We had BRMs for each of the different business segments. So our supply chain, HR, business operations, store operations, all had bros. We called them bro, business relationship owner, not manager. Manager has
Right.
a particular meaning for us, but I'll try to refer to it as BRM. So the CIO asked me to take on that role, and sometimes when the CIO asks you to do something, you just do it, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of morphed into, over time. We can get into it a little bit later, but right now I've had the opportunity to now lead our current point of sale program,
Right.
which is replacing that same point of sale 20 some odd years later. It's the largest program our company's ever taken on. I've been on the program now for just over 2 years, 2.5 years. And we're working up to our store one. So in the next month or so, we're hoping to roll out to our first store.
Excellent. So give us a little bit of insight about, you played a lot of roles as you started in your career, from a developer to an architect towards that. So from an IT perspective, has the flavor of BRM elevated you with your rich experience? So how do you complement your technical capabilities with the BRM? Because a lot of times I see people ask this question, do BRMs need to be technical enough? Because you have done it from the base, so you have a lot more ground on the IT capability part of it. So how has it helped to move into that new roles and capabilities? And how, from the time that you started being a developer on the POS program, POS, towards running this as a program, how do you see that BRM has helped you on that journey?
Yeah, I think a lot of the tools that you get in from being a BRM are critical to just growing as a professional. I think and I used it. In fact, I just suggested the BRMP class to somebody for professional growth. Not that they're necessarily going to be a BRM,
Correct.
but there's a lot of tools that are available, building relationships, communications, identifying stakeholders, and sort of all those tools are in there for a lot of roles, not just for being a BRM.
Sure.
And perhaps I should say differently, perhaps I'm being a BRM all the time
Right.
in all of those roles regardless. But I think the biggest thing that it did for me was helping to build the relationships that put me in places where people saw me as having the ability to take an opportunity when the opportunity came available. And then some of those opportunities led into becoming more of a business person rather than a technician.
Sure.
So like when we were implementing SAP, we had never done a budgeting process for our corporate departments. They had it, I shouldn't say never, but not as organized and sort of official as it became after SAP. So IT, being the biggest budget in the company, was asked to sort of be the guinea pig for budgeting in SAP. I didn't have any accounting background, but because of my role as a BRM, I was close to the CIO at the time, and he said, "Hey, why don't you take this on?" And I just,
Right.
"Hey, Charlie, I don't have any background like that." And he said, "Yeah, I think you can do it." So I did. And really what that did, I now got to establish a relationship with the CFO.
Right.
Right. I'm getting in front of the CFO, getting credibility for not just IT, but for myself.
Sure.
And then also it gave me a different viewpoint. I came from development and I came then from architecture. And, it's a very technical approach of making sure we had the correct technical solutions that we're putting into place. This gave me a very different viewpoint, sort of the opposite viewpoint of how do we manage that now in cost? How does that affect other business areas? And it really turned me into more of a business person that works in IT.
Right.
Rather than an IT person trying to do business. And so I think all those aspects and all the BRM tools, especially the communications and understanding the stakeholders and the building the relationships, all were super key to making sure that happened.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point that you said that about looking at becoming a business person rather than just looking at IT person looking at business. So from that particular perspective, as you evolve these roles, you seem to be more on a strategic role. So what does it take for a person who starts their career in IT, right? As you rightly said, the BRM tools capabilities can be for any role that you play. So how does a person step up and go up in the value chain to become more strategic? Is it just based on experience? Is it just because you be in a company for a long period of time? How do you make the transition? Because Deryl, a lot of people struggle in this space. Not everyone likes to go into that kind of understanding about the business part. So what is your take on that transition for someone who's getting into the journey, doing whatever role that they get picked up as part of their first job? How do they kind of navigate to become more strategic?
Man, I wish I had a magic bullet for you there, Suresh. But here's a couple things. First of all, I was looking at the relationships and relationships across the organization. So when you're interacting with different areas of the business, even in a technical role,
right,
building those relationships with those people are also going to be the ones that come up, right? And
correct.
The relationships that you have with all those people across the company are going to impact when opportunities come up, or when we're trying to figure out who do I select for a particular role.
Right.
The more people know your name and the more people know your work, the more likely you're going to get asked to do this next thing. Sure. And I think the other thing is from my side, I like to tell people that I don't know, I think I've been in 10 different jobs or 11 different jobs in 25 years at Discount Tire. And that happened because of the relationship stuff I talked about, but also because when somebody came along, CIO or somebody else came along and said, "Hey, I know you're doing X, Deryl, but I would like you to do Y." And I just said yes. Good. And, if I've been in 11 jobs, 8 or 9 of them, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Right.
And people had faith in me. If they're asking you to do the job, they believe you can do it, right? They're not going to be successful if they're asking you to do it if you're not. So you should have the support system in place. So I think it's building relationships and being willing to take a chance when that opportunity comes up, and maybe recognizing that opportunity doesn't always say opportunity on the front. Right. Sometimes it just looks like more work.
Correct. And do you think that over the journey, Deryl, that you would solicit more of a mentor to guide someone in the process, or do you think that it's more about a peer-to-peer relationship and colleague kind of bouncing ideas? How do you think someone, and it's just general, right? Any organization as a person wants to improve themselves and go up. What are some of the attributes that you would suggest to make it count? And also another important area is it still worth spending time in an organization? Because a lot of people think that after 3-4 years, okay, it's time for me to just shift gears. So give us a little bit of perspective, because today I'm seeing this is a big struggle. People just are not very clear about doing it. So you have done that, and now you have all the legitimate rights to tell people how you went about in terms of mentorship and getting this done.
Well, I think there's a lot, there's peer-to-peer, but I think if you can have a mentor that is higher up in the organization that can help you understand what is it we're looking for at an executive level, right?
Right.
And take as high up in the organization as you can get. Right now, I have a few different mentors. One is our chief corporate officer, and our chief marketing officer. So, in addition to the CIO.
Right.
So I have a few CIO or C-level folks that I'm doing mentoring with, but I hope that a lot of C-level folks could be open to mentoring those folks that are really the up and comers and helping to teach them what it takes. It's not something you can learn in school.
Sure.
And it's not something you're necessarily going to learn from a peer. So
Right.
I think if you can have that opportunity to get a C-level or close to C-level mentorship relationship going, that's really where you want to go. But again, I think it all goes back to the communications and the relationships that we talked about. When you're in those discussions with different groups across the organization, take a minute to actually have a conversation with people, not just, if you're a BSA, you go get requirements, or if you're a PM, you go get your schedule, but take a few minutes to get to know people and, start building that actual relationship with them. And then you can work into some even informal. Everything doesn't have to be formal. Sometimes mentoring is informal.
Right.
And I think from the flip side, when I'm talking to people, I'm looking for those opportunities to coach.
Yeah.
And if I see somebody that might need help, then I'm trying to provide that back into the environment as well. So just doing it openly both directions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point that you mentioned about having mentors, and also I think there is it's a journey, right? It's a kind of a marathon that you'll have to kind of stay intact and believe in the process. Look out for the opportunities that has been provided to kind of nail it, and it changes gears. Now, how did you connect up with BRM Institute, and what's been your experience so far? I mean, I know that sometime before you were also an executive. I mean, the council vice chair. So just about BRM Institute and how has that helped you in that overall journey?
Yeah, so when I was asked to do the BRM role, I didn't know anything about it. And, we kind of knew what a consulting company said, hey, you should implement this capability. So, like I said, we were near the end of the SAP implementation. I wasn't working very much directly on the SAP implementation, but the other people that were asked to be BRMs were deeply involved in it. So I had some time to do some exploring, and that exploration I ran across BRM Institute, and they had a course. And eventually we had the course come on site. We had Von Merlin.
Awesome.
I mean, people probably know the legendary Von. We were very fortunate to get Vaughn to come out and teach us the class, and we all got our certifications. And then coming out of that, I was asked to join the BRM as a vice chair on the BRM council with a few other people that from different companies.
Right.
And I think a lot of that got me. I'm not a great outgoing person. I'm pretty internal. I'm pretty a shy person by nature. But that helped me. We did conferences, and it got me to speaking at some of our conferences. Just getting up in front of people and getting an idea that some of the things that I do and I know and some of my experiences, people might even actually care about, right? And so just getting to talk about some of those things And I think building relationships across, again, I mean, I keep going back to this theme of building relationships, right? Building relationships across different companies and understanding how they were implementing the same capability helped us figure out what we should actually be doing with the capability.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of uh, what factors, as you started to accept the BRM role, and you know that a lot of times you don't have all the information, you just jump in with a
Yeah.
blind faith and stuff. But from a personal attribute standpoint, Deryl, what do you think were some of the factors that drove you to accept BRM? Is there some kind of personal attributes that you thought was really making you to move that front to accept that position wholeheartedly? Did you do a kind of analysis on that?
Yeah, that was kind of a jump for me because it was it was very different than where I came from, being an architect and coming from development. So, I had a lot of different thoughts about it. We had a role before called process owner, which was kind of prioritizing, it was the job of prioritizing projects
Right.
and prioritizing work. And I had been doing some of that in addition to my architecture work. So when the CIO asked me to take this on, I was a little hesitant because I was a technician. So one of the things I was concerned about is I kind of know where I can go in architecture in terms of growth and how that sort of leads into leadership. But what I didn't understand was if I go take on this BRM role, it's brand new. There's no organization behind it. There's no
Sure.
obvious growth path to it. What's my growth path look like? And he said a couple things to me that I thought the second one was pretty profound. The first one was pretty simple. At some point, it's probably going to grow enough that there'll be a manager, it'll be a department, and so some management will come out of it. But the second one was the most important one, and that was in this position as the IT BRM, anybody that wants anything from IT is going to come through you.
Right.
So you're going to be the doorway into IT. And he said to me, I don't know what opportunities that's going to drive,
Right.
but it's going to drive something.
Right.
And probably multiple things because everybody's going to come through you. You're going to get relationships with everybody that wants anything from technology. And in my experience, that's pretty much exactly what happened.
Right.
It led into doing the finance and then it led into some other roles. So I think that was really understanding what the growth pattern can be and then trusting Rich, or CIO at the time, trusting that what he said was going to be true and it worked out. So I think, again, taking that leap of faith and saying yes, and then, it's up to you after that. What do you do? How do you build the relationships and how do you look for those opportunities and pick the right ones?
Sure. So in terms of, let's go a little bit about on the relationship part, and you've been telling it, reinforcing that aspect of relationship. Now there's different kind of relationships, right? So there's a few things that we need to get some of the things done at that level. And you talked a little bit about communications between different stakeholders at a level of bottom to that. In your opinion, towards building a relationship with your stakeholders, what do you found to be the most challenging part when you build a relationship? Because not everybody is going to be conducive to say yes to you and embrace you with both arms. So over the years, as you started to develop relationship, did you find a pattern of what works, what doesn't work, and how should we focus on relationship with everybody? Is it that you pick and choose about it? How do you go about this whole thing? Because you could spend a lot of time on building relationship that could prove to be futile. So how do you play that game in terms of, I don't want to be opportunistic, but I want to make sure that I do the right things for the right purpose. So how did you go about, what are some of your learnings from building the relationships?
I think a lot goes back to our company philosophy and we have a thing called the discount tire management system. And we're a very in-person company.
Right.
And, the last couple of years has been pretty challenging for us having people remote and we're trying to get people back in the office. But I think really getting to know people. And I think it's really understanding, you go back to Whipham, what's in it for me, right?
Right.
If you don't understand much about the person, you're not going to understand what's in it for them. And it's always going to be about how do I how do I talk to the person and figure out, I need something, you need something,
Right.
what's that common ground, and how do we make movement on that common ground? And I think it's having a genuine relationship. And I know things about people's kids and their grandkids, and
Right.
who's going to school where. And that doesn't mean everybody I'd have that relationship with everybody, but I think it's the approach of being comfortable getting to know people in that way. And then they have to be comfortable with you. If you're gonna take a next step and really do great things together, it's important to know something about each other. You have to build trust.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So for us as the final part, what are some of the key takeaways for someone who looking to be a BRM, or even looking at some of the toolkits that could help them in the journey of career progression? What would be your takeaways that you would present from your experience, your journey so far?
I think going back again, I think relationships is the key to everything. Um, and communication is the key to that. Relationships are trust, and communication helps build trust. And then I think everything gets done through that trusting relationship. If you really want to get business done, trust is the basis of it, and relationships are built on that. So you go help get the relationships built, and then it's up to you after that what you do with those. I think the second one is, don't be afraid to say yes.
No.
People are going to ask you to do things, and sometimes it's going to be more work, and sometimes it's going to be things that you may be uncomfortable. I'm not suggesting anything that you should be doing the wrong stuff, but
Sure.
I'm saying sometimes this puts you in an uncomfortable position where maybe you're not sure of what the work is or what it's going to entail. I'd say don't be afraid to say yes to things, and jump in with both feet and learn them and go.
Right.
And that goes to the next one, which is just don't be afraid to try new stuff.
Yeah.
If someone's asking you, they believe you're going to be successful, because their success is also going to be based on yours. I won't ask people to do different things if I don't think they can do that. And I think that's important to keep in mind, that my success is built on those I'm asking to do things, and that's true of everybody else. And then finally, I think look for those opportunities, because they don't always see opportunity on the back of the jersey.
Yeah.
And sometimes it says something different,
Right.
and you have to go back to say yes and jumping into something new in order for those opportunities to actually come to fruition and turn into something good for everybody concerned.
Yeah, that's a great point, and you summarized it pretty well in terms of first say yes, and then we'll figure it out how to go about doing it, like what Richard Branson says, right? You have to first say yes, and you'll figure it out an opportunity as an entrepreneur to go there and accomplish that. So that's a very important part. The second part is also about moving away from your comfort zone, as you said, like becoming comfortable in being uncomfortable. So that way there is a lot more thing about, okay, let's do something. I mean, I like the way that Jeff Bezos says that in his ages of 80, if he looks back, he doesn't want to have regrets. So it's one way of looking at it. We have tried everything, rather than just whether it worked or not. That's a secondary part of it, but at least you attempted that, which that's kind of a satisfaction that you get. And as a BRM, I think the overall construct is, as you rightly said, it's not just about whether you play the role of a BRM as a designation, but irrespective of what role you play, these tools, techniques, and strategies will come in handy, right? My final question is, from an IT perspective, how important is BRM role, and what are the opportunities for people to move in that particular career path?
I think it's absolutely critical. I think the engagement part with our business is absolutely critical. We've actually, the role has changed a lot in our new CIO that started in 2020. He doesn't even really call it BRM or BRO. It's the formalization of BRM is sort of dissipated, but he brought in people at senior director, at my level, senior director and vice president levels, to do that engagement at the highest level with our business now. So
Sure.
I think it's absolutely critical that we have people that can influence our business for technology,
Right.
and people that can help them understand how to prioritize some of the work that they're asking for, and then help give them guidance at the highest level, at the C level, right? We have our engagement folks are engaging at the C level to make sure from the absolute strategic level, we're driving the right work at the right time to make sure we're achieving those business results that we need. So I think it's absolutely critical. And for those companies, to me, this is the ultimate implementation of BRM, is when we have people talking at the C level that are sitting at the strategy table, truly sitting at the strategy table, and they're carrying vice president titles and senior director titles. I think that's the ultimate implementation, because now you've truly achieved that strategic partner that everybody's seeking to get to.
Awesome. That is a great way to summarize that. You BRMs have an opportunity to become the directors and vice presidents to get a seat at the table, and that's a fitting way to look at this episode. So thank you so much, Deryl, for sharing your insights. And that is Deryl Heitman, the Senior Director for POS Program at Discount Tire. I hope you all enjoyed this conversation as part of the BRM Brown Bag. I look forward to seeing you all in our next episode of BRM Brown Bag. Until then, watch these series and start commenting and what areas of topic that we want to cover. I hope that you all know now BRM is a land of opportunity. So wherever you have been here, it can take you beyond. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, Deryl, again, once again, for your time today.
Thanks, Suraj.